Leaders Talk, the interview podcast portraying leaders who are committed to better leadership, better organizations, and a better world. Powered by Leadership Choices.
Welcome to Leaders Talk, the interview podcast for better leadership, better organizations, and a better world. My name is Carsten Draht. I'm your host today, and I'm one of the managing partners of Leadership Choices. We had a conference lately, November 4. We had our 5th virtual conference, the Open University, together with our friends from WHU Otto Beisheim School of Management. The topic of the conference was organizational purpose, opportunity, or opportunism. In this episode, we are bringing to you the panel discussion of this conference. On the panel were very interesting professionals and individuals from diverse sectors, societal sectors, and industries. We had Judith Hübner, CHRO for Sasol, oil and gas company, Anja Wassertheurer, Head of Corporate and Communications for Porsche AG. We had Zoe Cohen, a coach, an activist, and a spokesperson for Extinction Rebellion UK. And we had Christoph Waffenschmidt, the Managing Director, CEO of World Vision, the largest privately held welfare organization for children on an international basis. And so let's go right into the panel discussion. It's a very inspiring and interesting discussion. I'm looking very much forward to your thoughts, your reflections on this, and also how this resonates with you. But let's go into the panel discussion now, and then we exchange notes afterwards. All right, so let's go right into this. Welcome everybody to the Open University, and here in particular to our executive panel discussion. The topic is organizational purpose, opportunity, or opportunism. And let me introduce our panelists to you, and they can introduce themselves much better. But a couple of words. Let's start with Judith, because she's in the upper left window of my screen. So Judith, we go back quite a while. We know each other since many years from different companies. Now you're working for Sasol. Can you briefly describe what Sasol is and what you do there?
Okay, of course I can. So Sasol is a combined energy and chemical company. So let's get this over with. I'm coming out of the dirty corner of the world. So we are definitely contributing with quite a bit of CO2 in South Africa, because this is a South African company. And we're doing coal mining and energy for South Africa. It's the second biggest energy company in South Africa. And we're doing a lot of chemical things in the rest of the world, having chemical sites in Germany, in the United States, in Italy, and in China. And I'm responsible for the human resources and communications function in Eurasia, which is basically most of it is in Germany, then quite a bit in Italy, and some bits in China, and then there's 80 more countries, but with very little people, so to say. It's basically sales offices there.
Thank you.
So that is
welcome, and thank you that you're here today. I think it would have been easy to say no, but you said yes, and I'm very grateful for that. So
yeah, and I'm having to say, yesterday we had this WhatsApp chat, and I was a bit anxious because we had so many do-gooders here, and especially following what Stuart all said, and I can so much relate to this. And I thought, let's see, but it makes it interesting. It's diverse, so let's try to put it like that.
We are all here with an open mind to learn from each other. I think that's the key thing. And again, thank you for that. Then Christoph Waffenschmidt, you are Managing Director of the largest private welfare organization for children. Is that right?
Yeah, you can put it this way. Thank you for inviting me as well. Looking forward to our discussion. Yes, I'm the Managing Director of World Vision in Germany, and World Vision is a An organization active or working in more than 100 countries globally. And the focus of our work is really the well-being of children. And we work in development, in long-time development. We work in humanitarian crises, such as the refugee situations in many countries these days, or after natural catastrophes and so on. And the third pillar of our work is actually our political advocacy work that we have established a number of years ago. So not only to do good and to work on the ground, but we see it's necessary to work with a big frame and try to shape it with our advocacy work as well. So happy to be here today.
Thank you, Christoph. Welcome to the panel.
Thank you.
Moving over to Anja, and I think if you look at the picture at the wall, there's no much questioning what kind of company could Anja be working for. You are on mute right now still, Anja. And Anja, who are you, what are you doing, and what are you passionate about whilst doing this?
I'm working as a director for corporate and product communications with Porsche AG. So it's, I'm passionate about communication business. I used to be a journalist for 16 years with the sports car magazine. So it makes kind of sense that I work for a sports car company right now. I dare to admit that I'm passionate about motorsports as well. I say it firsthand because I listen to Stuart very intensively too, and I am caring about our environment, about the future, as I have two kids, of course. But well, I feel that Porsche is a company mainly associated with the dream sports cars that we build, but it is a company worth working with, especially as we actually were very early in announcing, in doing good. If it is for people that need help, we have special platforms with that, because we say whatever we earn with selling cars, we have to give something back to society. And we really understand sustainability as a whole. Like, we want to be economically successful, we want to think ecologically in a good way, and we want to share our wealth with the people around. So that makes me convinced that I really work for a very good company.
Thank you, Anja. And again, also here, thank you for being with us and being part of that panel. Much appreciated. Also that you were all part of the keynote. I think that also gives quite of a depth to this discussion. So thank you for that. Zoe, you are here as a coach, as an activist, and also as one of the spokespeople, I believe, of Extinction Rebellion UK. Maybe not everybody knows exactly what that means. Can you fill us in a little bit?
Thanks, Kirsten. So I wear a few hats, as I guess most of us do, really. A citizen, a mum, a voter, a human, an executive coach for the last sort of 12 years or so. Prior to that, I was a director in the NHS, in the healthcare in public services in this country for quite a long time. And I've been involved in Extinction Rebellion for almost 3 years. Extinction Rebellion is a self-organized movement that started in the UK, but is now in sort of 70 plus countries across the world. Started originally in 2018, so kind of 3 years, we're actually 3 years old, just over. And we're a self-organizing movement. We're focused on non-violent civil disobedience, non-violent direct action, to be in active rebellion against our government. So there was a declaration of rebellion at the end of October in 2018 that declared we're in open, peaceful rebellion against our government because they're failing in their duty to keep us safe. And the first duty of government is to look after its citizens, and it's failing. So that's the purpose of Extinction Rebellion, and we are in ongoing peaceful disobedience.
Thank you, Zoe. And also here, thank you for being with us. We had a longer conversation, and I think you also wanted to make sure that, is this a genuine discussion, or is this something where it's kind of framed in a certain way? So thank you for being with us and also sharing your views.
Thank you.
Christoph, over to you. So I mean, if you are, World Vision, that sounds like purpose is a tick in the box. That should be easy for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how would you articulate the purpose of your organization? Why are you in existence?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I would say you're right. It should be a tick in the box. We are a cause-related and a purpose-driven organization. That is the core of what we do. Maybe to put it in an alternative expression, we are a not-for-profit organization, but of course we work for a profit. And our profit is the well-being of children. That is a profit. It's not a profit in finance. It's not a profit that you can measure in dollars or in euro, but of course you can measure it in the well-being of more children. I could say more about that and how we measure this, of course, but this is not the topic for today. But definitely that is our purpose. This is why we started more than 70 years ago, why our founder started it, because he was the story of the beginning of World Vision was in the Korean War, so in the 50s, when he started to support children, and he established World Vision later as an organization, first in the US and then in the 70s in Europe as well. So this is where we come from, always purpose-oriented or a purpose-driven organization. Plus, I would say that comes from the roots where we are. Our identity is we're a Christian organization. So we come very strongly from the charity aspect of what is charity is actually the Latin word caritas. So in German, it's Nächstenliebe. So it really says what it's about. And as a faith-based organization, for us, it's important to be in line, our values to be in line with what we do. So we check on that every day, more or less. And I don't want to be an evangelist here on that part, so don't get me wrong. But what I say is, for me, for example, is I even put it here. There is this one Bible. I don't know if you can see it. It's the Justice Bible, and it's a normal Bible, and it just marks all the parts in the Bible where it talks about fight against poverty, fight for more justice, and it's more than 3,000 verses in the Bible, parts of the Bible. So I say, this is our foundation, this is our identity, and we have a job to do to care for the needy. So I could say more, but and you see, it's about passion, and as well, purpose is very closely intertwined with the passion. So much from my side. So
thank you, Christoph. Now moving over to Judith. Sasol, that seems to be a bit of a more far-fetched kind of leap from Sasol to purpose. So obviously each organization has the purpose to kind of provide work and safety to their workers, to their employees. That is like the lowest hanging fruit. But how would you describe the purpose of Sasol, Judith?
I mean, I would first of all connect to what you said. Safety as the most important thing for us. So we start every meeting with talking about safety. So that is really important. And I've been working for Sasol only for 11 months now. And I was actually, when I started working for them, thinking, what are we doing with the purpose thing? Because what is it? And we definitely need to change. I mean, climate change is not here since yesterday. We talked about that, and everybody made a great secret about what's going on with the sustainability questions in that company. And then finally in September, I think we emerged with this a little bit better. So I would say we are on a journey with this. So what we are trying to do is saying our purpose is kind of innovate for a better world. We are trying to reduce our carbon footprint by 30% until 2030, and I think it's truly a challenging objective. I don't want to debate whether that's enough or not. I mean, I think we probably all together in this and say we need to achieve more here. But we're trying really to work on this. And when we look at the chemistry front, then we're trying to use more and more sustainable energy for doing what we are doing. And not everything we do is not really good for the environment. We're probably, I mean, we're producing the carrier substance for the isocarb that is used in the BioNTech vaccine. So there's a lot of things we're actually doing, also producing catalysts for sustainable aviation fuel and stuff of the like. So I think what we can potentially attract employees with is coming from where we're coming from, with a CO2 heavy business model, and knowing that we have to change that with this innovating for a better world, and really say, if you want to change the world with us, because we need to change, and that is not debatable, then this is really a challenge for everyone who wants to join. And I think that is, it's probably a bit more difficult than saying, okay, I want to do something good, I joined World Vision, because their purpose is so obvious. So that is
kind of changing the way the organization kind of works. And sorry, I don't want to put you in any difficult position, but you shared that with us.
No worries.
That there is, for example, one plant in South Africa to make coal liquid that emits as much CO2 as the country of Portugal, right? So this is not lightly. This is kind of right. This is like a no world. Yeah.
That is terrible, and we all know that. But I mean, the challenge is not only how to change that for the better when it comes to all these challenges in climate change, but also to make it socially acceptable, because coal is the only way basically South Africa is dealing with electricity. So that is the major source of energy in South Africa. And I'm glad that, and you could have, I don't know whether you've read it, but in the COP2 26, they just decided to have this just energy transition partnership. So the US and Europe are doing a partnership with South Africa, trying to help them reduce the CO2 footprint, because South Africa is the biggest CO2
emitter
producer in Africa. And I think there's really the will to change that. And when I look at what our CEO, and one of the most humble CEOs I've ever met, I have to say, when I listen to him, I think it's really authentic that he really wants to change things for the better. Whether that will be enough is to be seen.
Thank you, Judith. Now, from a company that is in the public perception kind of clearly on the side of, polluters, Porsche is a bit of a different animal, because Porsche is an organization or a company where many people are absolutely crazy for. You have this electric sports car, the Taycan. The sales number for the Taycan have just outnumbered the sales numbers for the 911, the kind of the big flagship brand of Porsche. How would you describe, Anja, how would you describe the passion or the purpose that Porsche stands for in many men, but also in women?
Actually, it would be I could tell you now, Carsten, that the purpose is sustainability, but that's not it. I guess the purpose of Porsche has always been and still is to fulfill dreams and to make people dream, like to make them aim for a goal, to get the best possibility of maybe drive a 911, or if they are much more modern, a Taycan in the future, the all-electric sports car, the first one. And to do that, and that is the other point, with a good conscience. That is why we actually announced that we want to be CO2 neutral by 2030. And I'm pretty optimistic that we will actually reach that goal with a speed that is very unique to Porsche. And as I said before, in one of the rooms, the talking rooms, we have like the locations in Weissach and Zuffenhausen and in Leipzig. They are CO neutral by now. And what is very important, it is not so difficult to manage that by buying like your compensation certificates. But that is, for us, it's only the last step we could do. We really want to do it by by caring about our environment, especially if it comes to renewable energies, to use that one with new methods in producing, and and with a product portfolio as well, of course, and with certain initiatives like, for example, the e-fuel initiative we set up in Chile in order to actually have renewable energies from other parts of the world and to import them to Germany, where we won't be able to produce as much energy as is needed in all the different branches that we have around here. So yeah, but the main purpose, I guess, is fulfilling dreams.
Thank you, Anja. Zoe, I think talking about purpose and talking about Extinction Rebellion, talking about your role as an activist, as a coach, again, that seems a little bit like a tick in the box. What I'm curious about, if I was part of Extinction Rebellion, how would I feel this purpose in your inner working, in your conversations? What is driving the folks that kind of stand up and are part of your movement?
Yeah, I perhaps will answer that question, and I'll perhaps answer a different question as well, if that's okay, Carsten.
Okay, go ahead.
I think if you ever were to be part of Extinction Rebellion, or XR for short, or XR event or meeting or action or rebellion, you would notice a lot of difference from normal life, particularly normal corporate life. There is so much love and so much compassion and so much collaboration and so much will to act together for no money. It's not about money. And the care, collaboration that is shown quite often from people you hardly know or don't even know at all is quite astonishing. And since I've been part of Extinction Rebellion in the last almost 3 years, I have learned so much about what it is to be human. There is so much that every organisation in the corporate world could learn from a utterly purpose-led movement. It's astonishing. It's quite astonishing what can be achieved. But I really also wanted to answer a question that feels like it's the elephant in the room. If only we had enough elephants to have elephants in the room anymore, which of course we don't really. But you know the expression probably. And the elephant in the room for me, which has kind of been poking its trunk in and out of the conversation so far, is that one of planetary boundaries. You know, purpose has to sit in the context of reality, and our reality is that humanity has burst several of the planetary boundaries that we exist within, whether we like it or believe it or not. And so I'm not picking on Porsche, I'm sure respect to you and your for all that you do, and this is not personal whatsoever. But having a car, never mind having a Porsche, is not a human right. Being able to fly isn't a human right. Having a big house isn't a human right, but right to life is a human right. So we really need to focus on planetary boundaries and meeting human needs, not meeting human wants. But wants that have been created by a system that tells us that we ought to want a Porsche. And sorry, I'm not picking on Porsche here. I could pick in on BMW or picking on anything really, brands that sell us stuff. Quite, like Pepsi, Coke, it's brown sugary water that makes us poorly in a bottle of plastic that kills the seas. That's all it is. But we're told by advertising and the system that we need and want this stuff, and we don't. We need food that's healthy for our bodies. We need clean air. We need safety. We need shelter. We need love. That's what we need. The rest of it is just a mirage, and that's the truth. And we need to focus on human needs within planetary boundaries, because that's the only way that we're going to find a way through the next few decades without mass death and suffering. Sorry to bring the tone down, but that's just the truth.
So I mean, nobody expected anything else. I think that's fine. So I think when you say within planetary boundaries, you mean within the level of or the amount of resources available to our species in this generation, right?
Kind of, yeah. I can put a couple of links in the chat, but so one example is, for example, there's a guy called Jason Hickel who writes a lot about this, is like material use, so materials use, and the amount of material use that the earth can sustain and that our mother of all mothers can cope with and renew each year. And we're already using twice the amount that she can cope with being extracted from her annually. And yet, material use and energy use is almost direct, well, it's almost exactly correlates with GDP growth. And we have this utter focus on GDP and obsession with GDP. GDP does not relate to human needs. And we know I'm sure everyone here knows that when you cut a forest down, you increase GDP, but you harm ecology and you harm humanity's future and you harm your kids' chance of any long-term life. So, but it drives GDP up. So we have to focus on what really matters and measure what really matters. And it's not GDP, it's human needs.
Thank you, Zoe, for bringing the elephant in the room. I mean, since you mentioned Sasol and Porsche, does anybody of you want to share their thoughts?
Maybe just if we're talking about the elephant in the room and about human needs, there is a need that other people actually addressed already. It's safety. It's bringing up your kids in a safe manner, give them something to the future. And I feel, yeah, GDP growth for the sake of GDP growth is not the important thing, but actually like companies having a safe business, taking people along, giving a lot of jobs to a lot of people actually are a big factor, I feel, to safety and for the future of our kids as well. And I feel quite good in feeling safe if it comes to my work and to being able as a mother to afford some things that give a better life to my children. So I feel it's a little bit one-sided if we say we don't need companies like this and GDP and things like this. So I see I feel we have to differentiate in that respect.
Thanks, Anja. Judith.
I didn't understand it in that way. I thought that she was, or that Zoe was basically saying that a lot of needs which are out there are just basically created by marketing and not really there because we definitely need that. I mean, you could sustain on food and water and have a decent room to live, and that's basically what it is. But people are still talking about these 70 euros flights to Mallorca and back and things like this, what definitely is not a need. So I can very much relate to this. I think the need of energy, and when I look at what we're doing in South Africa, we're basically giving people energy to heat their houses, to turn the lights on, and they still have hours where they just don't get any energy because the energy produced in South Africa is not enough for the need they have there. So the question would be, how can we really reduce the need for these things? Because in South Africa, it's really a basic need. I mean, I think we in Germany or even in the UK, even after Brexit, you still have a lot of energy to use. So how can we reduce this? Because we're in the end, we're from my company, we're dependent on the less need there is, the less CO2 we would probably produce. And I'm not trying to use that as an excuse. Don't get me wrong. I know where we are, and I know that we have to change that. And I would, what I'm trying as a human resources professional is trying to help them to find the scientists and the engineers to make that somehow happen as soon as possible. So.
And I think it's easy to kind of go down the route of right versus wrong. And I'm trying to get to a slightly different notion of how does purpose inform our actions in a corporate setting or in an organization setting. is that genuine, or is this just because it's en vogue? Christoph, again, if we talk to a faith-based organization where we say, okay, purpose is kind of crystal clear. When we talked first, I challenged you a little bit. How does the purpose materialize on the inside? I mean, is everything kind of always happy clappy when people come to you, want to give back or want to do good in the world? I mean, what's the challenge of being a faith-based organization when we look on the inside, if you can share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's a very vital question that you raise, because I think we have a different approach, and by that we have of course, the standard that people are expecting, the environment in which they work, the way we work together, the way we cooperate as colleagues with each other, the standard or the expectations are higher. I sense that, absolutely. People are coming, staff is coming to us, maybe after 20 years in the corporate world, in the assessments, they say, well, I have earned a lot of money. I have worked for the profit of the owner of the company. Now I want to give back something. And of course, they come now to us, and sometimes they bring very good value and really an added value and a different perspective, of course. But at the same time, I have to say I don't think that we are less professional like normal corporations also, or corporates. And that's something that we see, that people are coming and new colleagues are coming. And sometimes I've heard that many times. They said, well, I thought, coming to World Vision, it's a bit relaxed, it's a bit easier. But my approach as the CEO, or what I'm always talking about, is you come here and you're allowed to come as an entire person, as a holistic person. So we want your professional side, we want your emotional side as well. We want you can bring in your spiritual side if you want to, no doubt about that, but whatever you like, but come as a professional. And that's important. So, and that's sometimes a change when people are joining. And I think the point is, you don't work less in World Vision. It's not that that you work, with maybe sometimes with a bit less pressure, as we try to have a culture of really seeing and valuing people. That is something that is really at the core of what we do and how we want to work there. So culture and purpose is something that we work and talk and reflect upon actually each day, or at least every other day. So it's a different surrounding, but definitely not less professional. And maybe last sentence towards that, how does that inform our actions? It is that we're a hands-on organization. Everything we do is hands-on, is really something our work is not, we don't create a product, but what we do is in a way save lives, support children to go to school. And it's very community-based, everything we do. So when we're in our projects on the ground, in Ethiopia, in Vietnam, or wherever it is, we work with the people, we work with the children. So you feel it, you see it, it's tangible. And I think you see our purpose is then in action. And at the same time, this refuels the tank of purpose. And maybe that's an idea of an answer to what you asked.
Thank you, Christoph. Anja, I mean, I know, or we know Porsche a little bit from the inside, because we work with you, and I can say for myself, I'm always absolutely struck by the passion of the people in Porsche. I mean, everybody I talk to is really passionate, and there's the culture of, we want to improve, we will always want to become better in what we do. There's really this drive kind of to get better, and there's a lot of work going on, and it's not necessarily financial bonus or anything that is driving people. It's really this identification. So maybe, Anja, can you give us a bit of an inside view of how that purpose, that passion of Porsche is kind of informing decisions within the organization? How would we see this?
Actually, what I feel, if you look to the automobile industry, we are still a pretty small company. Like, we love to say we are kind of a family. You may joke about that, but in a way it is like this. We don't have hierarchies that are really strict, like you could, like even let's say some I don't know, some people, no matter what where they are located, may have the chance to talk to the board members. We are not very let's say not very formal in the working together, and in addition, as I said, we are a company that builds great sports cars, that has a kind of a very rich heritage if it comes to motorsports, and we always competed. We like to win, like this the case in motorsports. And I think most of the people that actually join the company have exactly that spirit. They want to be part of the game. They want to be really part of the company. It's not just earning some money and doing its work till 5 p.m. in the afternoon and then go home and close the door and not thinking about it anymore. Like, I would say almost everybody who works with Porsche, if it is in research and development, if it's in the production or in communication or marketing, the people really want to work for exactly this company. That accounts why, like if you look to questionnaires like Trendance or so, like even within students, we are a company that everybody like to work with. We get a lot of applications for different posts. So it really is a kind of, we have this we feeling, we can move something, we can change something. In one of the first rooms, I said, I would like to make a difference. Need not be in the company, but maybe even for my family, for my friends, whatever. And I feel that is very much the case within Porsche and within my colleagues. They want to make a difference. They want to be very good. They want to be exceptional, and prove that by their working results.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Zoe, question to you. This year I was on a cycling trip to the North Cape, and actually on my cycling trip I met a person working for Extinction Rebellion for the first time, real person. She's from the Netherlands, and she asked me not to use her real name because she was kind of living off the grid. She was spending time with friends who are working with Extinction Rebellion XR that she didn't know their real names. They were kind of in a different stealth mode kind of thing. Now, can you shed some light on the purpose on the one hand side? That's clear. How is that on the internal side? Are you in danger of being surveilled or being outlawed or whatever? Why is that approach necessary?
Yeah, thanks, Carsten. Interesting question. I wasn't necessarily expecting that question, but that's fine. I'm really open to any questions. Yeah, there are quite a lot of people in the movement that who I'm connected to, and obviously that there's many thousands of people around the world, so I only connect with a proportion of those people, but a proportion of them use pseudonyms, or some of them are just nicknames that they prefer to use. I use my real name. I don't use pseudonyms, and some of that for some people might be related to security. I think some of it's just because they like doing it, but on a serious level, there are certainly risks, and I don't know about other countries but I can't speak for people in other countries, but in the UK, the government here is getting more and more authoritarian and is in the process of seeking to introduce a massive clampdown, new legislation, new policing bill, which basically outlaws pretty much all meaningful protest quite soon, and creates huge consequences for even one person, even single person protest. So if one speaks out or repeatedly speaks out, and then a number of us have had our homes raided, and been arrested at home. I know some of the co-founders of the movement have experienced that. I experienced that for the first time a few weeks ago. My police arrived at my home without warning and raided my house and arrested me, put me in handcuffs, put me in the metal cage in the back of the police van in front of my neighbours and drove me off and interviewed me and then released me under investigation. So I'm still waiting to see if they're going to try and charge me for that. And that was for basically for speaking the truth, for speaking out in terms of some actions that were being taken by a sort of sister movement of Extinction Rebellion. So not Extinction Rebellion itself, but of Insulate Britain, which is like a sort of separate group of people who are taking action at the moment. And so, yes, we are, obviously taking non-violent direct action sometimes involves doing things that are at risk arrest. So, and we know that we all do training in relation to that as part of the movement. So those people who feel that they can risk arrest are aware of that and are prepared as you can be for it. And then obviously once you've done it once, it gets easier to a degree because you know what to expect, but it's still not pleasant. And all the consequences of that, the legal, financial consequences, the emotional consequences, the etc. So we face quite a lot of consequences, and I took an action earlier this year with a number of colleagues in April. That means I potentially face prison next year. 7 of us carefully, peacefully cracked some of the windows of Barclays Bank HQ in Canary Wharf in London to call out the bank for being the worst fossil fuel investor in Europe, because they've invested 144 billion in fossil fuels since the Paris Agreement. So knowingly doing that. So that this behaviour needs calling out. So we took that action in the manner of the suffragettes by carefully breaking glass. And so we've got a jury trial next November, and if we're found guilty, we may face prison. So yeah, there's lots of risks and consequences. But as much as possible, we do that with our eyes open. But our government is getting more and more authoritarian and putting in place, making it harder and harder to protest and putting harsher and harsher. They've recently imprisoned an Extinction Rebellion protester, a blind gentleman. He's a blind Paralympian, so a former Paralympian who climbed on a on a plane at City Airport in 2019 and sat on the top of the plane, glued himself to the top of the plane, and the judge put him in prison for a minimum of 6 months for that. Just for calling out the threat that aviation, particularly business travel, is to our future and our children's future, and they put a blind man in prison for that. So that's what's going on in the UK at the moment, and it only looks like it's going one way at the moment. I hope that answers your question, Kirsten.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I was not aware of that at all. That's wow. That sounds really terrible. I wasn't expecting that, quite frankly, but that there was such a real reason kind of for that. Not sure how to transition into the next question, but I'll try anyways. Christoph, what do you think that organizations or corporations, should I say, for-profit corporations, can learn from organizations like World Vision? You mentioned it earlier, but what do you think is there to learn? I mean, in this conference, we also want to bring for-profit, not-for-profit organizations, movements. We want to bring them all together to learn from each other. What is there that you believe companies like Porsche, like Sasol, could learn from World Vision?
Mm-hmm. I would say my first answer would be, since the aim and the purpose of what we do is the well-being of children, we want to display that actually in the way we work as an organization. So our culture as an organization, how do we kind of treat, how do we work with our employees, with our colleagues, and so on. So one of our absolute priorities is we value people. So, and I think many corporations do that too, absolutely, no doubt about that. But maybe maybe, I don't want to say we're better than others, definitely not, and better than corporations. But I think because the goal of what we do, our aim is to focus on children, to focus on human beings, I think there's a natural way of how we implement this kind of culture in our organization as well. So it's natural for us. Maybe that's one answer. And the other is, since, of course, for many corporations, as we heard now as well today, there is this more purpose-driven or impact-driven focus now. It's part of the strategy of the company, and for us, it has always been. We have never, produced something you can touch or that you can drive or so. So our product, so to say, is really more health for a child in Ethiopia. That's our product, if I want to put it in this way. So how to work there, how to be on the last mile, for example, to realize that, that is something what we know, where we are experts. And I think that is, maybe that's something that we can bring in a corporation with a corporate, maybe, or in exchange like this, because it has always been part of our job, and we always try to improve that as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you. Judith, over to you. I mean, I think there's also some resonance. I saw your comment in the chat. So, I mean, what is it how is that resonating with you? And is there something that you would like to kind of integrate into Sasol, or do you think there's anything that movements, organizations in the not-for-profit world can learn from Sasol? Those were two questions.
No, yeah, I know. It's a difficult. I think it's a difficult question. I think everybody can learn something from everything. So, what I would actually like to have a closer look is how you can bring a purpose more to life. Because when I talk about this innovating for a better world, I mean, that is such a vast headline kind of, and can you really breathe that when you come into the company? No, you can't. I think we are in a kind of transformational phase, and we have to have a closer look at how we integrate that a little bit more in the strategy and in what we do with employees and everything, so that people are more aware of that we're really going to change, because change, as in this company, is not an easy task. I mean, it's not easy anywhere, but the energy and the chemical industry during the last 50 years, they were basically printing money for their shareholders all day long. So now coming and saying, oh, the world is changing, the climate's changing, and we majorly contributed to what it is or what it looks like now. And now we have also to try to kind of mitigate that and try to change ourselves and help the world become a better place in a kind of sense. I think people not really grasp that concept fully yet. So looking at how we can make people believe in that and breathe that spirit a little bit more would definitely be something to learn from a company which has got a better or a purpose for a longer time, apart from business is about business, you know. So
thank you. There's one more question, and then I would ask you, I would invite each of you panelists to ask a question to another panelist. So that's a new format that we're trying out today. I would have one more question to Anja, and also to others. Anja, Stuart was mentioning that how he kind of transformed from being a senior finance executive to becoming a coach, to becoming a climate activist, and also how he's integrating that in the coaching. And Zoe, I know that you're a coach too, who is also kind of integrating that in the coaching. Now, plain question to Anja and to Judith, is that something where you say, do you think coaches have a mandate to bring this in, that kind of the wider context in which organizations operate? Or bluntly, would you say this is kind of overstepping the mark? You guys have a mandate. Your mandate is to make my team more effective, to make me a better leader. That's it. Leave the rest out of that conversation. So how would you share your thinking with us there?
Actually, I like to actually get to know different perspectives on things. So I feel actually the benefit of having a coach in the team is the outside view, is different views. So it's very rewarding. I feel if, like for example, Stuart or you working together with me, like giving me different things to think about, to see things from a different angle. Because as I said, I mean, my way in life and work life was not very straight as well. Like I changed my jobs several times, started in like being working as an air hostess with an airline, then in a more technical part, then studying business administration, working as a journalist, and now as a PR spokesperson. So, and I feel it's very rewarding if you get the chance to actually turn to the right or left side at certain points of your life. And I always think it's the right thing to do. Like I have a friend who lost his wife 2 years ago and just can't cope with that. He's a lawyer, a very respected person, up high in the level with a big company, and he just decided actually to sell his flat, to buy a motorhome, and to actually step out of his job to work only 1 day a week for his old employer, and to be out in the nature, to be together with his deceased wife. And I really think it's just great that today we get those opportunities without people asking whether this is appropriate to do, or to say it's kind of a weird thing to do. So in short, it is rewarding to see different angles, to get fresh views on things. So feel free to do that if you work with me all the time.
So this is recontracting, actually. Okay. Now, Judith, I mean, if you were working with a coach, you know, in your executive team, and all of a sudden the coach would bring in the topic of, you know, guys, what's your carbon footprint? How are you going to think about that in the going future? You know, what about your children, the next generations? Would that be okay? Would that be overstepping? Would that be a reason to fire and change the coach?
For me personally, I would actually, because I thought about that movie, you know, what would happen. For me, it would be perfectly okay, because I think when we look at the world we are living in as of today, everybody, no matter where and what kind of context, has every right to ask these questions and to force people to think about what's going on there. I mean, I had a conversation with one of my employees. He is driving to work every day with a car, even though he could just take the train. I mean, he's living 2 minutes from the train station, and he says he just doesn't like trains. And I was like, you have children, so what are you doing here? So I think it's not only a human right to ask these questions, it's basically kind of obligation to do that now, because otherwise we will never be advancing from where we are. And someone said, I do think that we need to question our way of life. Placing our hope in innovation and scientific progress is not enough. We have to rethink how we live. And I think for this reason, it's perfectly okay. And I'm in a management team where basically everybody, apart from 1 or 2 people, have grandchildren. So they should have an answer for this. Mm-hmm. So I would actually support it. And I know that not everyone in my management team would support it in the same way.
This is actually also a thinking exercise for us. I mean, I'm sitting here not as a neutral facilitator. Obviously, I also have a stake. I mean, when I spoke with Zoe, I was driving in my SUV, which is a hybrid car, but you know, what the heck. And it's, you know, it's we are all part of that, right? So I think that's the positioning, what we have to do. But I think it also informs our thinking, what is possible, what is wanted, what is our position as an organization here. So that's very helpful. We have to stop somewhere. So I'm opening it up for rounds of questions where you may have a questions for somebody else on the panel. And then this is also the opportunity for the people in the audience to get ready for their questions. So who wants to go first? Christoph.
Yeah, I would raise the question, Anja, to you. What do you think in 5 years, what will be the strategy of Porsche as an organization? What will be the big goals that this company is aiming for? What do you think?
Actually, I think it will be some traditional goals. We are not aiming for volume, but we are aiming, of course, to get kind of a revenue of selling cars. So that will stand in the middle, but we actually focus quite a lot on beyond mobility topics. That's what I said. You may have noticed that we actually invest into battery cell companies. We have a joint venture there, that we invest in an e-fuels company in south of Chile. So actually, it won't be building cars like it was before building cars, because we see that we have challenges coming up from our planet that we have to cope with. We want, of course, to keep on doing what we do. We actually see sustainability in a holistic way. We want to be ecological, economical, and social responsible. That is why we actually give quite a high amount of money to people that are in need. We actually feel this is our responsibility. If we earn quite a decent amount of money, to give some of that back. I know that there might be different views of this, but that is, I feel, the vision that we have, like being responsible for our colleagues in the company that work with us, that earn the money, giving the dreams, being able to still fulfill dreams, as I said, with our customers, and yeah, giving some of the earnings that we have back to society.
Thank you, Anja. Do you have a question to somebody else in the panel?
Actually, just one question. Maybe I missed that in the beginning to Zoe. I've learned you are an activist for 3 years, but I did not quite get what you did for a beginning in work, or what was your career way, how you actually turned out to be a coach and an activist.
Oh, thanks, Anja. Thank you for the question. Yes, straight from university, I went into the National Health Service in the UK as a graduate trainee, and I worked in the NHS for 15 years, 9 years at board level. In the middle of that, I did a role nationally in a body called the Audit Commission, which looked at value for money across public services. And then in 2009, I decided to leave my permanent job to work full-time as an exec coach. So I've run my own practice since 2009, and since 2018, late 2018, I've been gradually scaling it back. So from a very full-time practice to about 15% of my time and turnover, so that the rest of my time is focused on what my heart and body wants to do with the rest of my life, which is different forms of activism, some with Extinction Rebellion, some catalysing my own profession, some speaking, some writing, some online stuff, and also doing a project currently which is in support of the Global Assembly, which is something I've just put in the chat, which is a really, really super inspiring thing. So I just wanted to give it a big plug. If people haven't come across the Global Assembly, it's truly, truly inspiring. It's the world's first ever global Citizens Assembly, the first time that a representative group of humanity can have their voice heard, where 50% women, how good would that be? Where the majority of people from the global south, because of course the global majority is in the global south, etc., etc. So it's really super inspiring, and I hope that people will have a little look at what they're doing.
Thank you, Zoe. And now that the virtual talking stick is with you, what would be a question that you have to somebody in the panel?
Thank you, Carsten. So I don't want to direct this to any individual. I think it's just as if this question resonates with you, what yeah, there's so many questions. I think there's something about, you know, what might be the role of your organization in 2030 when we know that we've gone past key tipping points.
Past the tipping point?
Past tipping points. But when we know unequivocally that we've gone past key tipping points because we haven't done enough in the decade preceding, what will be the role of your organization?
I could share something.
Please, Christoph.
We have this method that is called FMNR, Farmer Managed Natural Regeneration, that was invented by a colleague of mine, Tony Rinaldo. He is an Australian, and he was awarded the Alternative Nobel Prize 3 years ago for that. It's a reforestation that is not planting new trees, but that is working with the roots that are already or still existing, even in deserted places. So I think that is one of the key instruments that we can use, and I think we can still use after a tipping point. I see the great potential there is in reforestation. I see great potential in swamps. I see great potential in just working with the nature, giving nature space. And so even if we're behind the tipping points, let's work with those instruments called nature that are working and that can maybe get us back to a point where we reverse a tipping point. I'm not an expert there, definitely not, but I would always trust in the power of nature, even after a tipping point is passed.
So an optimism that would still pertain, but then doing something in that direction, working hard in that direction. Judith, I see you have your microphone open. You want to answer the question?
Well, I don't have a bloody clue. I have to say, I don't have a clue, because I'm so much hoping that we don't reach the tipping points. And I mean, I'm basically virtually trying to light a candle every night for this, even though, and Carsten, you know that better than anyone else on this call, my natural pessimism is in my way there. So, but I don't have a clue. And I think, and I'm not an expert what is going on with the climate and what happens there, but I feel from what I've learned so far is when we reach certain tipping points, then there is no way back. And why do we have then to talk about organizations? Nobody would want to have washing powder with surfactants from Sasol then, or a Porsche. Or people would probably stop thinking about giving away money for children in Ethiopia, because then everything would fundamentally change so much. I don't know. I don't have a clue. If I had, I would probably do something different.
Thank you, Judith. Thank you for being so open and vulnerable. I think that's what makes this discussion also so very, very special. And I would like to open it up to our audience or participants, members. So if there's a question, if there's a reflection, if there's a sharing, please come forward, raise your hand, much quicker than typing. It's a very small conference anyway. So any thoughts, feelings, what's in your gut? Bernhard.
Yeah, thanks, Carsten. First of all, I would like to thank all participants for their openness, because I think it's a very impressive scenery here. And I would like to reflect on something that our Coach Federation brought up 2 months ago. It's a white paper about our coach responsibility towards exactly the issue we are talking about. And my first reaction was, well, that's not my business. I'm going to support leaders and managers or whatever, but what they do is not my business. But I was thinking about that during our discussion more and more. And I think the openness here, having so many people from corporate here, is a good sign, because if we all change a little bit from our normal habits, we will have a great chance to not to reach the tipping point. But we all have to do it, and we have all to discuss in the whole society what we are discussing now.
Thanks, Bernhard. Thank you for sharing. Other thoughts? Arlette, please.
Yes, thank you. So I think it's also a lot about changing systems. And I think this platform is very positive, because we are uniting different perspectives from the civil sector and non-profits, for-profits. And I think, or maybe it's a wishful thinking, through this collaboration, if we start collaborating together, right, using, for example, big companies like Porsche that could enable smaller non-profits to be more innovative, or to make visions more tangible. Maybe this is a way that we can change systems. And to give an example that I really like a lot is the change, for example, in to tackle the problem of food waste. So there have been activists, right, that have been saying, hey, we're having a lot of food waste. What do we do about that? A lot of small companies that are trying to reduce plastic, and this topic has been discussed for many years. And before, at least in Germany, when you were asking like, hey, don't use plastic or this and that, it was like, oh, these eco people. And now if you see these small changes from activism, from small social entrepreneurs, now is in the supermarkets, you see that now the biggest retailers are rethinking, okay, the consumer is now more aware that they are polluting through plastic, and now they are changing also, right? So, and also the whole system in terms of politics, how do we handle with waste, is also in a way, we are rethinking about that, right? And this is my reflection, and I would really love to see from these platforms like Open University that maybe it comes something concrete that we could do together, right? Because in the end we can discuss, yeah, the government this and that, but in the end the question is, what do we do? Where do we start?
Yeah. So no finger pointing, but what can we do ourselves? Yeah. Thank you, Arlette. Nathan.
Yeah, I think my takeaway from this panel is that everybody plays an important role. Like, Zoe's an activist, and I think that's like, she moves the needle more than we probably give her credit for. And Extinction Rebellion and organizations like that they hold us accountable. But on the same token, you're still people are people. They still want their Porsches. They still, but so then you have Anja though, who's serving that, like, it is that change agent within the org. Like, Porsche's not going away. If Anja decides that this isn't moving fast enough or isn't sustainable enough, and she's going to quit, but like, somebody's got to be that change agent within organizations. So like, I teach my MBA students that, of like, most of you probably aren't going to get jobs at B Corps. You're not going to be a chief sustainability officer. I had one student just got a job with Keurig, making those stupid plastic coffee cups. But I know that she's now got this model. I'm like, your responsibility is to go in and change that company. However, whatever that looks like, to go in and be that change agent. But I think that's an important thing to remember, is that we are all kind of doing this work in different fashions. And then I think the beauty of Zoe's work is that we're constantly being held accountable. And if you're greenwashing, you're going to get called out, and you're going, you know, so I think it's forced us in the corporate sector to think more about, what are we putting out there? Is it really impactful? Do we really, you know, are we talking about it in the right way to inspire rather than to brag? So, I mean, it's a loaded panel, and it's a loaded topic, but I don't think we get to where we want to get without all of us doing our part wherever we are and doing the work in whatever form we bring the most value. You know, where do we bring the most value to this fight, and finding our own little niche.
Thank you, Nathan. Hans Werner, you're on mute.
The classic issue. To be honest, I'm a little frustrated because I strongly believe that this is all too late and too little if we do not change much more than we are talking about right now. If every consumer reduces the number of plastic sacks he or she is using, this is important, but it's not going to change really the situation we are in. And if we were able to use the Porsche R&D power to change mobility concepts rather to create a new Taycan, I guess this would be of much more value to the entire situation we are in. And we need to change society, and we need to change industry, and we have to find a way to not have mass unemployment that leads to terrible things. We Germans know this particularly well. So how do we change society in a way that we get through? And I'm a little frustrated to be honest, because we are talking about a lot of levers, but I think we need stronger levers than we are right now handling.
Yeah, so kind of back to the point, how can you remain positive and upbeat and do something and not feel powerless and do nothing, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Boundary, right?
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Not to do anything doesn't help either.
Yeah, exactly. That's for sure. Robert.
Yeah, Hans Werner, I agree with you. I think we need to think more in terms of radical innovation and a real pivot. And I think we should do it with optimism and with energy, and also with our ability to reach out to people and open their minds. But I think it's also, there is no point in blaming, but in observing and saying, hey, why are we here? Why do people need a Porsche? You just said, well, people still need their Porsche, but why? Because it's a status symbol. Why do we need this symbol? How can we pivot our perception of who we are in society to get our kicks and our good feeling about being alive on the planet from something else? And Porsche itself can be a big role in this by shifting our ideas to what a luxury or a status symbol really is. And with all the technology pedigree they have, I mean, if you think about a radical pivot, if we're just using Porsche as an example here, Anja, but if you think of a radical pivot, what really the leaders of this company could have of an impact on society is incredible, and we can help them open their minds.
Thank you, Robert. Yeah, and there's also, if you replace Porsche by Tesla, all of a sudden the discussion changes slightly, but it's still an individual mobility provider, right? Produces cars for people with a lot of money to drive around. So just to avoid some, too much Porsche bashing here, that it stands for something. It's a representation, right? Thank you, Zoe. You have your hand up.
Yes, thank you so much. Alas, I'm going to have to go in a second to another meeting so shortly, so I have sincere apologies for that. And thank you for having this perspective in the conversation. I guess I want to bring the perspective, which again is probably unwelcome to many of us and to myself as well, because it's unpleasant, but we have to look at the truth that we're still heading for collapse, social, economic, ecological collapse as a society, just as the Club of Rome told us in 1972. We're still heading, all the latest data says that we're still heading for collapse by 2040 without really drastic change. And so I would, I guess, encourage us to sort of look into the abyss and think, okay, well, that's going to happen anyway, so let's just take a lot more risk. We can all really up our risk levels You know, I love what you were saying, Robert. You know, just imagine if Porsche came out and said, okay, we're going to transition our organization to do something completely different. You know, and I would also really encourage people to look at concepts around degrowth and steady state economy, because we've been told that this system is like gravity. You know, we just have to accept it. There is no other way of being. Well, that's utter nonsense. The system we live in now has only just existed for the very tail end of humanity. We've never lived with this before. We existed way before this crazy GDP obsessed system was in place. And there is such inequality that is driving this. And it doesn't have to be like this. Another world really is possible. And there are so many other ways of being. So I would really encourage you to look at degrowth and to look at Yanis Varoufakis' most recent book, Another Now, is really excellent. Sometimes it's really hard to, you know, it's like someone said it's easy to imagine your own death than the end of capitalism. I can't remember whose quote it is, forgive me, I'm not very good at remembering. But that is often, I think that is the case. But actually, I'm not anti-capitalist, I'm anti a system that's driving the end of the biosphere. So, you know, if we could make this system work, I just don't actually believe it can, because I believe it's, you know, 3% growth equals doubling of the economy every 20 years. And you can't do that on a finite planet. You know, it doesn't fit. So we either have to have an equitable managed degrowth, or we have collapse. We choose, we get to choose. We are the generation that chooses, end of.
I think that is a bit of a depressing, but a very true closing statement. I think in the interest of time, thank you. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Anja. Thank you, Judith. Thank you, Christoph. And thank you, Zoe, for sharing your views. Wow. What a panel, right? I think there was not the slightest concern that this would be a not very, very interesting conversation. Wasn't boring at all. Very inspiring. Also a bit depressing, I would say. I think a lot of people left the discussion with mixed feelings. I'm looking forward to hear your thoughts. So how do you reflect what was said in the panel? What inspired you? Please share your thoughts. Write us an email at leaderstalk@leadership-choices.com. And please don't forget to like this episode on iTunes or on YouTube, and to follow our channel and to spread the word. Looking forward to see you soon, or meet you soon at one of our next episodes. All the best and stay healthy.
This was an episode of Leaders Talk, the interview podcast portraying leaders who are committed to better leadership, better organizations, and a better world, powered by Leadership Choices. If you want to give us feedback, please send an email to leaderstalk@leadership-choices.com. Thank you for listening.